Wonderful little town. There we go. Okay. All right, is there any names on here? Oh, here, okay. Here's, oh my goodness, there's a Vietnam, let me think, let me see.
Yeah, well, he just died. He was...
Do you know him, or do you know of him, or anything?
Well, I know who his father is.
Oh.
Can you get the date? See, the grass is kind of covering up the date.
No, I can't. It's 1979, I think it is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And then here's Michael Winship.
Yeah.
So
now
these
this
are...
is Ralph Winship's boys, and he lives up here on 10th Street.
He does?
Mm.
Why wouldn't his name be in the phone? What? Oh, he just did. This is quite... We spent the whole time with relatives in... oh, my... There we go. Where is he? I can't even find him.
Now, where's your hometown?
Los Angeles, actually, Malibu. If you just below Malibu, an area called Pacific Palisades.
One brother lives in Burbank, and the other one.
Oh, sure. Oh, is some Newtons. So, you know, cemeteries can drive you crazy. Now, here we go. This is Irene Newton, still alive. Reuben Newton, 1889, 1969, and Florence Newton. Now, I do not know if they're any relationship. And this is a Lucy Wheeler, daughter Wheeler, born 1852, died 1870. Old cemetery, that's grave tablets, 1829, 1862. Born 1877. Well, can't find the original Winships, but we'll go on and look for their house. Goodbye, Little Valley Rural Cemetery. Established 1862. Driving now out of Little Valley towards Salamanca on the highway. We're looking for the family house they refer to as the homestead. Said that Benjamin Winship was buried in proximity to his lands, and as we were driving along we chanced on it, and here we are. Yay! Benjamin Winship. My hands literally, and old grave sites. Most of them you can't even read. Names like Clement, Ames. Inside here is one, somebody's taken the time to fence it in. Machen, Ephraim, Dayford. Coming back here. John. Is this son of Ellen? Oh, here we go. Frank, son of Nathan and Eunice Winship, born March 20, 1852, died May 13th, 1853. This is rather sad. You can't really tell what it says. This is Benjamin Winship, March 1796, December 10th, 1851. Hannah, his wife, 1884, born, died July 9th, 1887. Father. This is Charles Winship. May 1st, 1880. Age 54 years and 4 months and 10 days. Hey, Charles. All right. Mary, wife of Benjamin Winship, died October or December, I can't read, 2nd, 1815. Something 84 is his age. And this is Benjamin Winship, died January 25th, 1818. Amazing. Amazing. Incredibly beautiful surroundings. Remote camera off, so I'm going to film this just in case, because if I didn't catch it, I might be very sorry later on. So I'm going to come back here very quickly. This is the tombstone of Benjamin Winship. Died in 1818. Mary, wife of Benjamin Winship, died 1815. There's their tombstone. I don't know, marker. There's the years. Born 1796, 1851. Hannah, his wife, 1804, 1887. Okay. Charles Winship, 1880. Frank, son of Nathan and Eunice Winship. And this is John. Barely can read it. On and on. How long has this house been here? Do you know?
Oh, it's been here for a long time, but I couldn't tell you how long.
You've lived here a year.
Just a little over a year, I would say.
Are you from Little Valley?
No, not really. I've lived here ever since I got married. I'm from West Virginia.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh. Let's walk around a little bit. We had a hard time finding someone who was from Little Valley. Don't stop like that, please.
Well, Mom, something's digging into my foot.
Well then, okay. Oh, I see these wonderful trees. Look at these. I see. And all that's farmland, I guess, huh? Look at that, all the way across here. He owned all the way up to that the graveyard.
Oh, yeah?
That must have been his barn originally, huh? Across from what they call Harvard Square, and this is the original cemetery, which is part of the Christ Church, which I'm going to come over here and take a picture of. And this cemetery goes back to the early 1600s. It's a very beautiful place. Will you be quiet? The cemetery itself is being restored by 10 feet at a time, so we're going to begin to take a walk now. We're going along a pathway of bricks. This is Garden Street that we're passing by. They say that many of the sites are not marked, or the markings have disappeared. They keep a plot map in the parish hall themselves. Not too accommodating, but nice enough because they get this kind of advice at the time. We're going by right now one of the crypt areas that's separated, and I can see that the path we're following ends here. I'm going to these bushes. Continuing on the path. We're looking for Joanna Winship. We're looking for Samuel Winship and Edward Winship. Oh, I imagine there's other relatives buried in this way. Coming up closer now. Somewhere there's a cross path. More sites. All right, I don't seem to be able to find the Winships. Right here, this says, here lies buried the body of Mr. Abraham White, who departed this life in May, so it's like 1798. Beneath the tree, where Edward Winship may be buried. It's very frustrating to be here and not be able to find exactly where their tombstones are. But I have a rather imagine that it's pretty clear once if you had a good map. Here lieth the body Daniel Corrins, 1686. Wonderful feeling in the cemetery. Really incredible. But unfortunately, the grave sites themselves are, the print is no longer legible. So I follow the area itself. Most of these have Latin terminology. Barely marked. Turn around, say hello. In Videoland and Stephanie in this beautiful cemetery on this wonderful clear day in Harvard. And Barrett coming through the trees.
You know, I think all these things, you can't read them because they've been washed away by time.
I think so. Incredible. I'm not sure I got that, so I'm going to try. I'm going to zero in on this, and I'm going to read this again. Here lies the body of Miss Joanna Winship, aged 62 years, who departed this life November 1707. This good school dame no longer school must keep, which gives us cause for children's sake to weep. Oh my goodness, there's another one. I found him! Come here! Okay, here lies the body. All right, now. All right. Here lies the body of Joanna Winship, daughter of Joseph and Sarah Winship, aged 21 years, 1760. Here's another one that looks like I hope I can read it. Oh yes, definitely it has Winship on it. Let's see. Oh, this is so exciting for me. 18 years of age. There's the Winship. It has a wonderful, looks like there might be a eagle on it. November. The year's quite long. Oh, here's another one. Now, let's see. This one says, here lieth the body of Mr. Joseph Winship, who died September 1725, 63 years of age. Let's see if I can get this in focus. Make sure it's in focus. Incredible. This is so exciting. Path, because once again we found some more of the graves all underneath this tree along the walking area. They call Harvard Square. Church burial grounds. We're coming up to one of those. Oh, it's so exciting. All right. Here lies buried the body of Joseph Winship, who died September 18th, 1725, age 63. Yeah. And on behind him, this is on the left as I'm walking down the path, is another Mr. Joseph Winship. I don't know what relative, or I'll have to figure that out later. Beautiful engravings, though. The remnants are pretty well intact. Now I'm crossing the path now, looking out over the side. There are some sites over underneath the tree, which I was unable to ascertain. Now I'm coming up here on the path itself, and this is one I shot before. Make sure this is the school teachers. Wonderful. I want to try and catch the detail on this. This is beautiful. Okay. Emmeline Winship, daughter of Obadiah and Isabella Whiston. Whoops. Right in the middle of the Winships. Okay. This is wonderful detail. Look at these incredible markings. Now this is also Joanna Winship, daughter of Sarah Winship, of Joseph and Sarah Winship, died 1760. Rebecca Winship. I hope I can catch this wonderful detail. Isn't that wonderful? Incredible. Wife of Edward Winship, who died 1717. About 61 years, they say. Edward Winship, who died 1718, about 65 years, it says. I'm walking back of these graves. Some sites went completely in a different direction. One unmarked. It says, let's see if we can get closer. It says Rebecca Winship. And This one is not marked. And this is Joanna Winship. Might have 2 headstones. All right. I'm leaving the cemetery now. I'm in the area where I think the other Winship's tombstones are, but as I said, that they're very clearly marked. It's beautiful, beautiful. So, what a trip this has been. It's just a really incredible. You should wait till you see this. Alright, now I see. Make sure it's in. Oh, it's going to be so interesting. Oh, Barrett, I am really excited. I don't mean to make it sound like I'm mad at you. I am so excited. I can hardly wait to catch all of this. Alright, let's back up here. We're filming right now at the old burial grounds in Lexington. Here we should be able to find the tombstones of the Winships, possibly not Edward II, because that was in Cambridge, and though Cambridge is very close to Lexington, and supposedly, or not supposedly, but the Lands took in both the Lexington and Cambridge. Many of the records are in both places. But what we're going to see here is probably not the militiamen. Some of them were buried in areas that were right on the field or in the family farms. And since we don't have a plot plan, we'll have to spend our time looking at all the grave sites. Though I will say this is a small cemetery, and I see some of the same names appearing. For instance, the first area was Lock, which is one of the forms of Lockwood. But I rather imagine they would have a larger site here, because it appears it is true that they owned the commons, which are the land here that was originally part of the farms of Edward Winship. Okay. Going from Reed's, Chandler's, 1870. Sarah Chandler's. Harrington's. It's amazing how many Wheelocks I've come across. Must be all tied together. Particular tombstone, it's and Jane stone, because of the beautiful detail. Very pretty. See the lovely angel. It's like the angel of death. I see this on other tombstones. It's so beautifully marked. Tombstone. What is it? 1770. Oh yes, I see this, and this is the same marking I saw on the Winship's tomb. Oh, beautiful. Here's Daniel and Elizabeth Tidd. Incredible. What a moment. Oh, here's one for baby. And he, I guess, died very young that time. And the Muzzies. Here are some of the Winship graves. I imagine some of them are going to be closer by right now. This one takes us to it's Mr. Thomas Winship, 1821. Oh my. Barrett, can you read this? And ye, what does it say? And ye whose,
And ye whose hearts with anguish born in thorns,
in throbs.
throbs of deep affection, mourn.
Reflect that freed from
death and pain. Your loss is her personal gain.
There's a picture of a fountain. And it's a memory of Anna Winship, wife of Mr. Thomas Winship, 1821. And here's 1830. What is it? Is that 1830 or 1880?
30.
Thomas Winship. And here's a Miss Elizabeth.
No, it could be 1880.
Yeah, it makes me think it would be 1880. Let's say once again is another Winship, Lexington. Here lies your body, John Winship, son of John and Mrs. Bethia Winship, who died. I can't read. Let's see. Something. (1748) when I walked over here, A.D. January 17, 1748. Here lies the body of Jane Winship, wife of Samuel Winship, who departed this life 1758. Shot of the little cemetery itself at Lexington. I have a feeling there's somewhere there must be a place where the original members of the family who died in the Battle of Lexington are buried. Grave marks is that of a British soldier wounded April 19th, died in Buchan Tavern, 1775. Fine, Barrett.
What?
What'd you find?
You from? Something like that. E-P-H-R-A-I-M.
Are there any other Winships around there? Look at any round anywhere else. Oh, they're in a circle.
It's over here.
Okay. Any of these Winships?
I haven't looked at them yet.
Okay. Census. If that's him, yeah, 1696. This is it. Great. Let's make sure I'm in focus here. All right. Let's see. Ephraim Winship. Here lies the body. Can you read it for me, Barrett? Age 64 years, died October 19, 1696. The memory of something lost is blessed. Okay, let me see. Where am I? All right. The memory of this loss is blessed. Oh, wow, incredible. Now, he was the brother of Edward Winship II. I haven't. Wow. I'll make sure that I have this. Okay, here lies the body of Ephraim Winship, aged 34 years, died October 19th, 1696. in memory, the memory of this loss is blessed.
So we know by obituary that Captain Obadiah came to western New York from Washington County, New York in 1807. Obituary. And we know his wife died at birth of first child, our grandfather, July 19th, 1880. Uncle Dan Newton, on the last visit to us in 1925, told me that Captain Obadiah married Sally Hanks.
Now that was the Obadiah's
Second wife.
second wife.
As we all know, Jacob and Sarah Calvin came to western New York in September 1804.
Okay, this is the David Drysdale house. It's on Carriage Road. It has been refurbished quite nicely. It's on the corner. Very close to, here we go. White picket fence. Give me a second, and let's put it up here, and there you are. Hey, you look okay.
All right.
All right, and then let's get you close. Let's see what happens if we zoom in on you. Hey, great. Welcome to the camera world. Okay, go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm John Newton Printy, great grandson of Daniel R. Newton. And this, I'm going to say over here is my wife, Sue.
Absolutely. That light's going to be a little difficult. Maybe we should
go back to John.
It's all right with you, huh? Okay.
But my own grandfather was Harrison Lockwood Newton, who would be a brother of Jacob Newton, who was the one that settled out in California. And my mother was Sarah Newton, daughter of Harrison Newton. We still live in the Orchard Park, or Hamburg area. East Hamburg Orchard Park was called at one time. And you were speaking of the Daniel Newton, and we mentioned Reuben Newton a little while ago. Well, now Daniel Newton, who would be my great-grandfather, had two half-brothers. There was Reuben and Obadiah Newton. And that happened because when Daniel Newton's father, who was Obadiah Newton, came here from the east with his young wife, and Daniel was born, his wife, who was Nancy, died at the birth of Daniel. So Daniel was taken about that time by Jacob and Sarah Colvin, and really adopted, I understand, as their son. But Obadiah later married again, and then he had two more sons, Reuben and Obadiah, or everybody called him O. And that's where that setup comes into the family. But Jacob, who we're speaking of here tonight, of course married Titus, in Abbott's Corners, or Armour, is now known, and eventually went to California. There was another Newton who also journeyed out there, Daniel Newton Jr., who would be a brother of Jacob and a brother of my grandfather Harrison. And he also had descendants out there. There was a daughter, I remember, Edith Newton, who, as a little boy, I remember she was on here visiting one time. And there was another brother of hers, Daniel, who I did see later years when I might have been about 18. He was on here visiting.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did they live in California?
They lived in Anaheim, was it? Somewhere out in that area. Yes, Anaheim, California.
Really? Nobody ever talked about them.
And then there was a son.
Did Jacob Newton have anything to do with these people?
Well, they were, I think so, yes. Jacob.
Because nobody ever in my family has ever talked about this.
Daniel Newton, the one we're speaking of, the son, brother of Jacob and Harrison, had 3 wives. The first 2 wives are buried up here in this little cemetery on Bunting Road. The one was Mary Standback, and the other was Louise Daniels. And then he married a 3rd wife, and both he and she are both buried out in California. And I trying to think back, my mother is kept in touch with Edith Newton, the daughter of this Daniel.
We have letters from
Yes, and do you have the postmark on them where it was written from? Do you think it was Anaheim?
I don't know, that comes into my mind.
But I don't remember. But then she died long before my mother did.
Of course, what years are you talking about?
Well, my mother passed away in 1971.
So this is fairly recent. I mean, within the last 50 years.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Daniel had, I think there were 3 children. There was, he had Daniel, and then he had Edith. There was another boy. I can't think of his name.
Isn't that something?
He was the younger one, and Antoinette, he kept in touch with Beulah some way, Beulah Newton.
Yeah.
And I can't think of his name.
Can I help you?
But they lived out there, so and I'm sure there would be descendants in that area. Now Edith never married; she was a school teacher and never married. But the 2 brothers were married and had children, and I know that to be a fact.
Isn't that something?
But
Well, now you don't have. You don't have any. Do you have any knowledge of? Maybe you could talk about what Obadiah's heritage was. I don't think we've really filmed that. We've talked about it, but not.
You mean the Obadiah would be my great-grandfather's father? In other words, my
Right, who originally came out here.
Well, Obadiah came from Washington County down along the Hudson River, New York State. He was a river boat captain, I understand. He journeyed east when he came to this western New York area in 1807, when it was a very wild and undeveloped section.
Well, now, have you gone to Washington County to find out how long they lived there and who lived there? And
Sue and I have passed through Washington County a number of times going to Vermont, but never had the time to stop to dig into it. But
tell about the time about the Newton farm. Oh no, that was Ferris farm. Excuse me, scratch.
Oh, all right.
Scratch it.
But
what was about the Vermont? Yacy, you were.
The Lockwoods came from Vermont, who were now Daniel, my great grandfather, who would be like Chuck Yacy's. Be your great. Yes. Well, anyway, he married Mariah Lockwood.
Uh-huh.
The Lockwoods had come to this area from Vermont and settled not far from here up on the Chestnut Ridge Hill. And they were very early settlers in this section also. But Obadiah, there isn't too, for a long time I didn't know what happened with him. You see, when my great-grandfather Daniel was born, and as I mentioned, he was adopted by the, sort of lost track of Obadiah, but he did marry again and had these two sons, and there are descendants of his two boys living around here.
I've got this, excuse me,
Oh yes, where was
found
it?
an envelope, Edith M. Newton, Bank Street, South Pasadena.
South Pasadena. See, that's where.
You know what I'm afraid of? I'm going to stop a second.
Oh, why don't you?
Can you give me a chance to, I'm going to make sure this is recording because, okay, all right. Let me make sure. All right, okay, what are some of the reminiscences? Reminiscences that you have, you know, when your mom and dad were talking about the family and some of the things that you remember that are stories.
Story. My mother, of course, lived to be 94,
Wonderful.
and it's fortunate that I was with her a great deal, and therefore some of these things have stuck with me probably more than they would some of the others in the family, because people reach that age, they have a tendency sometimes to go over these things occasionally, and I remember hearing my mother tell of her memories where she was born up here on Bunting Road on part of the old Newton farm, my great-grandfather Daniel's farm, and she told how the Newton children used to swim in this creek up there along the, it's a branch of the 18-mile creek through here. And of course the story, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, that Daniel Newton, my great-grandfather, there were five, I think he had five sons, and there were four daughters. Family.
Big family.
There was the oldest boy was William, and then there was Jacob, and then I think there would be Charles, who would be your great-grandfather, and then there was mine, Harrison, my grandfather, and then there was Daniel, who we talked about having gone to California. And there were also four girls. Now, I'm trying to remember if I can come up with all those names. There was, I think I can. There was one known as Mercy Newton, who married a man by the name of Frank Holman from Springville. And he's buried up in this little cemetery.
Now that's the one that died of a broken heart?
No.
No.
Which one is it that died of a broken heart?
Betsy.
Betsy was
Bunting. Well, I'll go on and maybe.
Anyway, go ahead. Anyway,
Anyway,
I thought that was...
anyway, there was Mercy Newton, and then she, I believe, was buried out west somewhere. She left this area and went out to live with one of her daughters out there. Oh, I know the one we're thinking of now. It comes to me. Yes, there was. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to correct myself on this. Frank Holman's wife was not Mercy. It was Melinda.
Yeah.
And Mercy is the one, and you're right. She did die. Well, I don't know about it being die of a broken heart, but
I like that idea.
it sounds. She never married, but she was engaged to marry a man from what's the area, Orchard Park, known by the name of Jasper Clark, with the old Clark family in Orchard Park, and he died just about a week before they were to be married. He developed pneumonia and only lived a few days. And she never married, and nor they say ever looked at anyone after that. And she was organist in the old Presbyterian church in Hamburg. They said that she was known for the fact that she used to sit up at the organ there, and they said she was quite attractive, but she was always looked very sad. And she is buried, let me see, I think, yes, she's up in this cemetery. To her grave is marked up there, Mercy Newton. Well, then there was another daughter, Betty, who married Tom Bunting in Hamburg. So there you have the 9 children of Daniel. William, the oldest boy, which I mentioned first, married Phoebe Jane Doole. They never had any children. And they're both buried at Prospect Lawn Cemetery in
That's where
Hamburg.
Doole's Corners.
Yes, that's where the name Doole's Corners comes from.
Oh, really?
And they're buried at Prospect Lawn, right next to where my grandfather and grandmother are.
Oh,
in
really?
Hamburg. But there were originally, I understand, there were would have been 12 children in the family of Daniel, but this 9 lived to grow up. I believe there were twins that were born and only lived a few days, and that would have been 11. Then there was another one that apparently died as a baby.
That must have been in the cemetery.
Probably are buried. In fact, I think in the Newton lot up there, Daniel, where his grave, the large marker is, you know, there used to be some little stones there identifying babies. That's probably where they came from.
Interesting.
But that all I've heard through my mother, you know, talking about years ago.
And the Buntings have a store.
Yes, well, Betty Newton married Thomas Bunting, who became quite well known in the area. He had a large store in Hamburg called the 6 Stores in One at the Four Corners. And it's known as the Bunting Block. And I can remember years ago it was still standing there, and it had Bunting at the top of the store. And he was quite a politician. He was elected to Congress from this area during the administration of President Grover Cleveland. And their home, no longer standing in Hamburg, but it was a beautiful large white house at Pierce Avenue where the KFC clubhouse is now.
Interesting.
But that gives you and of course Charles would be Chuck and Yacy's great-grandfather. He married Beulah Thorne, who would be another old family in this area. And he lived not far from where we're sitting here tonight, across the road in a large old home indirectly across from us.
Interesting.
And I guess he was quite interested in horses too, wasn't he? I've heard through the years he had a lot of horses and so on. But Jacob, who to be your ancestor, was the one who was the great horse person. And I think when they mentioned earlier this evening, Echo, now it's coming back to me. I've heard my mother speak of that. Apparently that was a horse that was quite famous.
Yeah, that way. In fact, I understand he traveled around the Horn and took it to Saratoga. Is that reasonable, or is that, I don't know.
Possible.
Where else do they race around here, other than the Erie County Fair?
Saratoga certainly would have been,
Saratoga's been
at that
famous.
time, would have been.
Yeah, that's what the story is in my family anyway, that he did that. Now, do you know anything about the Tituses, or is that,
Well,
that seems to be kind of a mystery.
that is, I can't tell you too much. Unfortunately, only what I think you already know, what I've heard. I've heard my mother speak of Aunt Mary Titus, she called her, who would be Jacob's wife, and that they had the 2 daughters. One was Bird, and the other was
May.
May. Yes, Bird and May. And I think, I did know at one time who those. Let's see, May. Now she married. Let me see if I remember right. Let me see. I knew the name of her husband, and
Yeah,
of course, Bird married Catherine.
Yeah, right.
But May, I knew the name of her husband too, but I can't tell you. It doesn't ring a bell with me right tonight.
Yeah, I seem to remember that too. And then she died, a young age of.
Yes, I think that's right.
And they had a great rift when the
Wasn't there a
division
rift?
of property,
Yes,
because there was a
wasn't
lot
there?
of wealth involved.
Yes, there was
Jacob had done, inherited a lot from Titus. I guess he was very wealthy. He was actually in the gold rush. He was a 49.
Yes, I guess he inherited a lot from Mary Titus and Titus family, and then of course he made a lot of money on his own. I guess after
Yes, he did.
California. Became very wealthy. But when this sister was dying, I know I've heard my mother tell. I can't remember the details at her deathbed.
Yes.
She wanted to change her will or something, and her sister was there. And interfered so that she died without changing it or something like that?
Yeah, there was a lot of problems, a lot of court cases involved. We have newspaper articles that
Oh,
go
do you?
back to that time that say how the two of them constantly battled over the monies that were involved
Mm-hmm.
in the state. It went on and on because as my grandmother died, a similar kind of thing happened where my Aunt Mary May died without a will,
Mm-hmm.
but she and my father fought over the estate that ended up in my grandmother, my grandmother's leavings, because my grandfather had already died, and there was a lot of property that was down on what is now Bunker Hill in Los Angeles, a major area. They had apartment buildings, and they owned a lot of properties, and there was it led to a family rift in which never was resolved. And when my aunt Mary May died, she died without a will, and we were just this last summer involved in receiving the benefits from an estate that she left where they found monies in safety deposit boxes and whatever.
Speaking of this, now Bird Newton would be the one married to or would be your ancestor, wouldn't she?
Yeah, that was
The other
my
one,
grandmother.
May, would her husband, did it ring a bell with you, would the name Levitt,
Yes,
and wasn't that his
right,
name?
right,
Just came ringing back to me.
Isn't
now.
that something?
Yes.
Great, that's
You know,
great, that's
but
great.
I know he was not too popular with her father.
Well, they used to borrow money all the time.
Yes, and because my mother just told me that now that they came on, all of them, for a visit east once.
Oh,
And,
really?
yes, it'd be Uncle Jake and May and Levitt. But I know my
Didn't he die?
mother said that Uncle Jake told her father, would be my grandfather Harrison, while he was here, that he got so annoyed with this Levitt because I guess he just was sort of what I guess we'd call the playboy type.
Mhm,
was
he
a
ran off with a-
very handsome man.
Right,
But and probably that's why she married him. But he never was much on trying to make money. He just wanted to live off the family. And I know that Uncle Jake was very put out with him there. And that may have been one of the rifts between the two sisters too, because of that. I don't know. But if I knew that name would come to me after a while.
Is there one here in Prospect Lawn?
Well, that's no connection.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's it's the same name,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
thought
not
it
any
was.
connection.
What about Benedict? Have you heard anywhere in Hamburg or any place around of the name Benedict where Mariah might have come from?
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
That's always been a mystery. And other than my mother telling the story that she had red hair and she was a shrew. I mean,
Now, she was, now who was she? Tell me again, you did mention it.
Mariah was married to Titus.
Titus, I see.
And they married here in let's see, what was it? in 49. They were married in 45. In 49, he went to California. And then he came back. We found some writings of his just before I left, where he came back to New York to pick up. I knew that Mary Titus and Jacob had come out there, but I didn't realize he'd come back for them. And I also didn't know that Mariah Titus came back to California. So that was new information.
See, I can't help you too much on the Titus end of it, you see, unfortunately.
But there are a lot of Tituses, you say, in the...
Well,
in
there's
this area?
not in this area anymore. There used to be, but I don't think they're right around the Hamburg, Orchard Park area.
Really?
I don't think so. I think most of them, unless they're some by other names, through marriage,
Yeah, right.
But I really don't think so.
Yeah.
No, and I know they up there across from the home in Armour where you were today, there used to be a large racetrack on the other side of the road.
Ah.
And the Tituses and Jacob Newton, they used to have their horses, train them on that track. That would be between Clark Street and
But
South
now
Avenue.
Daniel didn't race.
Pardon?
Daniel Newton didn't have racehorses, just his son Jacob and...
That's right. Oh, no, I don't think. Daniel was all he lived for, so my mother said, was to get more land.
And have children.
But he did.
It sounds like he did both well.
At his death, he owned 1,200 acres in this area.
Goodness.
And the area up through, from Newton Road to Bunting Road, South Abbott, this area right through here was all that large farm. And then, as each of the boys married, he gave them a tract of land. So that one time all of the 5 boys had tracts of land in this section. I don't think Jacob ever lived on his at all, but he did own it. But then he married Mary Titus. Of course, they lived in the home in Armour, and then of course went to California. And Daniel, who we mentioned, Jr., he lived in the home, of course, where Frank Newton is now up on Bunting Road.
Oh, really? Now, did we go to that house?
Yeah.
That was Daniel.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
That was Daniel's. And
Oh, I see. That's Daniel Jr.'s.
Daniel Jr.'s home, yes.
Okay, well, where was Daniel Sr.'s? That was the one that
home
burned down?
That's the one that
Oh,
burned down.
I
years
get
ago.
you.
You
I
probably
see.
showed her the location of it, didn't you, where it is there? But,
Where was Obadiah's home? He didn't have a home.
well, Obadiah had a cabin, they tell me, right near the where the little cemetery is.
Huh.
That's where Daniel was born. It was a small cabin. In fact, Jessie Bunting Eustace would be Betty Newton Bunting's daughter, told me once that there was a time that there was a little sunken spot up there near where the little cemetery is to show where the cabin had been. Now that's going way back, I'm sure.
But what happened to Mariah Lockwood? Did anybody know did she die of, or?
Be Daniel's wife. That would be. Well, she lived to be very old. After he died, he was a comparatively young man.
Oh, that's right. She died at 94.
Was it 94?
Yes, we saw that on the
Yes,
cemetery
yeah.
today.
Yeah, I mean, she
On the tombstone.
stayed up on the farm there for years with a lady who had been brought up by the family, who was a sort of a little, shall we say, not retarded, but not quite as slow, I guess, would be the way to describe her. They lived together, and then finally, all the children by that time, I think with the exception of your great-grandfather, Charles, who lived over here, the rest of them had all left their farms and moved to other areas. Some moved down into Hamburg, like William Newton moved into Hamburg and lived on Lake Street. And my grandfather moved into Hamburg, lived at Corner Long and Lake Street. Daniel moved away. Daniel Jr. moved. Went up into Oil Creek and tried to make money in oil, and eventually went to California. But anyway, they all were moving. And Betty Newton Bunting, of course, they lived in Hamburg. And they got to worrying about their mother up there on the farm with this lady. So
Sure.
they had her moved down into Hamburg, and they built a house right on Linwood Avenue. I know the house in Hamburg. It's Linwood's Point. It's a large house. You have to smile when you look at it, because here were 2 old ladies, and they
Living
built
this
this
big
huge house for them. I think I pointed out to you.
Yeah.
And in fact, a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, I'm in the real estate business, and it happened to be on the market, and I took the opportunity to go through it just to see what it was like. And it was a large house, had a big hallway with an open stairway and front parlor and a second living room. And of course, it's been remodeled some, but that's the house. But that's where she died. And Priscilla was the lady that lived with her. And they tell me, my mother told me that Grandmother Newton was always worried that Priscilla would outlive her, and she worried what would happen to her. But fortunately, one morning she found Priscilla in bed. She passed away in her sleep. So
She was the one they were going to take to the poorhouse or something like
yes, I guess that's the story. They had her in those days when somebody was taking her to the poorhouse, and they stopped up there at great-grandfather Newton's home, and in the conversation they found out they were taking her to the poorhouse, and they felt sorry for her, and they said, why don't you leave her here with us? So they did, and from there on she always lived with them, and she couldn't count, which is an interesting factor. but they said she could always set the table for the right number of people that were going to be there for dinner.
Count the people.
But she knew how many people, but she couldn't count. If you'd ask her to count 1, 2, 3, she couldn't. But she'd always know if there were extra people there. They'd go out to sit down. There'd be the exact number of people.
Do they talk? Were there stories shared about what it was like to come to this New York at this time when it must have been very rugged and unpopulated with.
It was very wild. Actually, Buffalo, what is now the city of Buffalo, was just like a little trapper's settlement at that time.
Really?
1907. And I don't think there were many white people this side of Fort Niagara around 1807.
Really?
And the first sawmill
Were
wasn't
there-
built here until 1815, so there were mostly cabins just built around.
Well, weren't there a lot of problems with the Indians and the?
Not in this area, not particularly. No, one reason now in this area, what's now Orchard Park, was settled mostly, well, I'd say most of the population were predominantly Quaker. And they were told that the Quakers were very friendly with the Indians. I've never heard of any great problem with the Indians in the history around here.
Didn't Mariah see them burn Buffalo from Chestnut Ridge Hill?
Yes. Now Buffalo was, of course, we know from our history, was burned by the British during the War of 1812, 1814. Now Mariah, our great-grandmother, I think it was, there's a story that they saw the smoke rising in the sky from the burning of Buffalo.
You know, it's interesting. The mother's family, from my mother's family, Benjamin Winship, who married Mary Adams, John Adams' daughter, migrated from Boston area, probably Lexington, to Little Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Up here, right? South?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And he was also in the War of 1812.
Oh. Well, there must be some, people buried up there, descendants or something.
That's right. We're going to try tomorrow to go over there.
I know you'll see up in that area, as you do in many of these rural areas, you see so many of these little cemeteries, burial grounds.
What's amazing to me, though, is that my mother's family and my father's family actually came from the same area.
Same area.
I mean,
I
isn't
say
that
that.
unique?
Well,
I mean, we within 40-minute drive. I mean,
it ended up, and they met
Yes.
in California.
yes, and many generations,
Daniel.
But they never made that connection. I don't know, people don't talk maybe about those things. I don't know.
Speaking of Daniel, another thing that he was famous for was the cheese, which became known as the Newton cheese.
Oh, really?
And he always had a large dairy, and they made cheese, and it was, I understand, very well known throughout the entire state, known as the Newton cheese. And that little house.
What happened to that?
that
Now,
little-
see, Chuck, you have a legacy. Got it? This is
Guys,
him.
making cheese.
The little house that's up here on Bunning Road, that one, I don't know.
Dix is living there.
Yeah, well, that was the cheese house.
I pointed it out to you when we went past.
That was the cheese
I
house.
think I probably wasn't registering on that, yeah. I might have been.
It's probably the only original building left from the old Newton farm. I think it must be.
Probably.
The house is gone,
You
the
mean I missed
barns are all
something?
gone. So it's been made into
You'll
a
have to come back next
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's been very interesting. It would be, I'd like to know myself if there are some of the descendants of Daniel living out in California there.
Yeah, well, follow it up.
It's not fascinating. I'm sure that, I know Daniel Newton, the one who was Daniel Jr.'s son, was here. I know he had at least 2 children. That I remember because I saw him when he was here visiting. I might have been about 18. I know he had a son at that time who he told, I think would have been maybe 5, 6 years older than I was.
What about the football player? I can't think of his name now, of course.
Frank Newton Gifford.
Yeah. And California, you've got
Always open house. And of course, in those days, people thought nothing of stopping in. Food was plentiful. Everybody had their own meat, their own
They made 20
poultry.
pies at a time and frozen
Yeah.
everything.
Frozen.
And they didn't freeze them.
Froze them, well, they piled them up, stacked them in the pantry. No heat,
Oh, I see what you're
so they
saying.
froze.
But, and another thing I was
Interesting.
told once that the Indians, you spoke of them being, if there were any problems, the Indians were apparently very friendly because at great-grandfather's home, they said that, of course, the doors were always open in those days. Nothing was ever locked. And it was not surprising some mornings to get up, early risers at the farm would find some Indians sleeping on the kitchen floor. And they'd come in there in the night and stretched out. They'd get up the next day, and I suppose they'd be fed, and then they'd go on their way.
Isn't that something?
But their home was always a place for people to stop in and stay. People would come and stay, I guess, endless amount of time.
I wonder why Jacob left and also Daniel Jr. Why would they leave?
Probably lure of
Gold.
prosperity out west, gold. Well, Jacob, I guess he was just a man who saw probably a chance that there'd be more wealth in the west. He went out there. And I wouldn't be surprised Daniel would be the baby brother. You know, he was the youngest in the family. Jacob was the next to the eldest of the boys. Probably Daniel just decided to follow his older brother out there. And he took his third wife and journeyed westward. And there he stayed. But I can remember he came back here when I might have been about 5 years old, and to see my grandfather who was living with us, who died that following year. And I think that was his last trip east. But there's some pictures taken. I have them at home in the old album, I think, showing him with my grandfather at that time.
Huh.
Well, I think we've got to get going soon.
Oh,
Very
wonderful.
fast.